Hello, lovely beings. Welcome to today's episode of The Autumn Mindset. Tis I, your host and energy and mindset guide, Autumn Oakley. So today's episode, I wanted to hop into a topic of overcoming binge eating. Honestly, these tools will help you to overcome binging in general, whether that's, binging Netflix, binging on alcohol, substances, maybe you are a, shopper. You go ahead to binge in purchasing things, whatever it may be. Binging on scrolling and doom scrolling, those sort of details. I'm going to focus on binge eating, but these tools will definitely help you and have helped me over the decades to leave binging cycles. And I went through a lot of them. And that's my wish for you. And, what I have learned is that, binging and binge eating really comes down to the relationship that we have with ourselves. We like to say that it's our relationship with the food, it's our relationship with the item that we're binging on. But what I learned to be true is that it isn't relation to the relationship you hold with yourself that is going to determine, how you can overcome binge eating or binging in general. So, going about this, there's been multiple times in my life, uniquely where I would binge a lot of things. And naturally, binging is just a coping mechanism. It's something that, we learn, and sometimes we, fall into that space where it just becomes an unconscious habit. So when you're healing, when you're growing, when you're consciously, elevating, you may get to a space that you're very much aware that you're binging. You're basically just looking down at yourself, watching yourself binge, but you still feel like you're unable to stop it. And that's the hard thing, when it comes to binging, is that sometimes it feels like we have no control. And while, it is true that we have control over, what we do, our habits, the actions we take, I can tell you, in my personal experience, time and time again, I really, really struggled to feel that I had control over these things. And this is just a part of the mind. This is, a part of what's kind of been brought into, society. And, when we are layering on different details, we layer on different habits. When we are basically promoted, in the way of life, for the most part, not to do the healing, not to step into change, it really, holds a strong impact in our subconscious mind. It holds a strong impact on our repetitive cycles. And when we repeat them for years, for decades, it becomes so overwhelming and difficult to leave these cycles, these repetitive patterns. So I just wanted to hop into what I've learned over the years, what actually helped me to leave these patterns, these cycles, and, to get to a better space. And I hope that this helps you on your unique journey of healing and growth and, leaving those habits and, those protective mechanisms that, let's face it, aren't benefiting us. They're not what we want to be doing. And when we're doing the binging, what it leads us into is lower vibrational emotions. When we're binging, it's been brought up into, our way of life in society. We're basically accustomed and, promoted, for, decades in just typical society to numb out on things, to not feel what needs to be felt so that we can, heal, release, let it go, consciously grow, get to a better space. And, that's what I want for you to elevate, get to a better space, heal those wounds. And I know it's not fun, but that's really, what has kind of about is that when we binge, we embody and we hold onto these beliefs that make us repeat the cycle. So when you look at, lower vibrational emotions, so that would be, in accordance to fear, grief, they would be, shame, all of these different elements. So when we embody these lower vibrational emotions, naturally we hold these belief systems, and that's what ends up being, on repeat. So when we go ahead to binge, we fall into the shame, which is the lowest vibrational emotion, and we hold on to that. So likely when we hold on to that belief, we feel that shame, we embody that, we hold that energy, we hold that mindset, we will continue to, fall into the shame again, because we don't heal, we don't let it go to understand that, that's okay. We binged, it's fine. We can meet ourselves with, some grace and some love with that. But, until we're able to heal those wounds and meet ourselves with, higher vibrational emotions of, gratitude for learning the lessons, for, the self-love that we're, trying to build within ourselves, for, getting to a space of peace and serenity. These are the higher vibrational emotions that when you are, actually, partaking these into your life, you hold on to these beliefs. This is what you're manifesting. So this is, aligned with the actions you're taking, because the beliefs that you hold align with the actions that you take. If we believe ourselves to be a binge eater and we hold that belief system, we fall into the shame, we fall into the guilt. We basically repeat this cycle because we hold that belief that we're a binge eater. We don't know how to overcome it. When we disassociate, that detail to say, I'm not a binge eater, I'm overcoming it, you gradually will recognize that you are slowly overcoming it. So I say this with, diagnosis all the time, but I also promote this, with any habit you're trying to get rid of, including, binging. So disassociate it with your identity, because when we hold things to our identity, we hold that to our belief system, and that will lead us back into the shame, into the guilt. And then once we binge, we go ahead to say, oh my God, I can't believe I did that again. I'm such a binger. Why can't I break this habit? And we just get stuck in the mind. We just get stuck in a cycle, a repetitive pattern, which is natural. It's just how our brains have been wired. But it's just kind of what's been conditioned. So until we kind of break free, learn some different tools, we often just repeat that. And, I don't want that for you. That was me for decades. Never understanding why I binge, never understanding, where it came about, never understanding why I could never stop. And anytime I did for a period of time, it would be months, it would always return. And it's just because, it just wasn't brought to my awareness. I just wasn't, partaking in healing. So things were not in my mindset that I was aware of. But it's when you do the healing, you become aware of things. It's when you choose to heal and to grow that you actually gain an awareness. You elevate consciousness. You get to a different, space in your mindset, your perception. You can use different terms, but that's really what it's about. You become aware of the root cause of things. You become aware of where, these things came from that maybe you feel you have no control over. You gain a different perception, awareness that, hey, I do have control over the actions I take. It's kind of like as you grow, as you heal, you really do elevate. And it's like you're, kind of floating in a sense. And I'm not saying, you're out of your body and floating, but perception wise, this is what it feels like, is that it's like a different angle of how you look at yourself and you look at your reality, you look at your life. When you heal, when you choose to grow, things change. So when you go ahead to take these steps, it's kind of like you're looking at your life, you're looking how maybe at one point you felt like you had no control over these things. But when you choose to elevate, it's like you elevate your perception. You look down on yourself, and how you're living life, those habits, and you can see that, hey, I can change. I can go ahead to take different actions, different steps. And, this is something that we're capable of. But what's been conditioned is a lot of repetitive patterns. What has been conditioned in our society leads us to the subconscious, systems, and just, stuck in repeat. And man, oh man, you just get stuck in the suffering of that. And I really, struggle with that for so long. So if you're struggling with that, know that, it's something we can break free from. It's something we can heal from. It's something that, we can go ahead to get to a better space, but we have to brave the change of things. We have to go ahead to do healing. We have to go ahead to step into growth and try new things. And gradually over time, you will definitely see, a change in the binging, but things will be brought to realization. You will have to recognize and face, the uncomfortable emotions that arise in regards to where the binging came from and why it's there. So these are some steps that you can take into your life for binging to help you, leave those cycles. And, they really helped me over the years, and I hope that they help you. So these elements, number 1, find the root and live in alignment. So what I have found is that, in binging, it was always a struggle for me. And yes, I was healing for years. I was growing for years. But I still always kind of fell into binging. And, that was, binging Netflix, binging on alcohol, binging, on food, whatever it was. There was always a binging habit that was really heavily built into my lifestyle just because of my upbringing and the need to numb out on things. And I couldn't recognize for the longest time, where these things came from. I knew that, they kind of came about from living in fight or flight. I knew that they kind of came about with, being overly criticized and feeling that, food was not a healthy relationship I had. My self-love was not a healthy relationship that I embodied in my life. So, healing those wounds, it takes time, and it's still, a process that I'm going to continue to do forever. We're always healing, we're always growing and get to a better space. But it's when I really was able to find the root cause to binging that it was brought to my awareness. So this is, what I like to view in regards to when we're feeling stuck in life in general. But, if you're stuck binging, if you're stuck in a habit, when you can find the root cause as to where it comes from, it's brought to your awareness. And once something is actually brought to your awareness, you shine light on it. And then moving forward, that basically is the thing that when you're feeling triggered into, partaking in, binging or, those aspects, because you've become aware of that root, you're basically looking at it. You're just observing it. You don't feel controlled by it anymore because you know where it comes from. And that's like anything, we can feel confused and stuck. If we're stuck amongst the darkness and we can't see what's going on, naturally you're going to feel anxious. Naturally you're going to be like, where the hell am I going? What am I doing? The mind's going to take over. That's just a natural thing. So if we can shine a light and really uncover the root cause of, what is, triggering us into the binge, then we actually become aware of it, then we look at it, we observe it, we know it's there, and it is so much easier to actually make changes accordingly. It's so much easier to take aligned action in regards to, a higher self, in regards to, not feeling the need to binge anymore, just for the fact that you're aware of where it comes from. Because when we're not aware of where it comes from, we just feel overwhelmed. We feel that it controls us. So when we can uncover the root, and that takes time, that takes healing, and it goes with, going through all the layers of details and, going through, subconscious reprogramming and rewiring to really, find the root cause of these details. But, this is, what it's about is that when we fall into binging, we are really just trying to either one, elicit a feeling, or trying to numb out. So it's one of those two options. So when we can become aware of the root, it really connects the emotion. And then when we can recognize the emotion that's associated with it, it's really easy for us to understand, what needs to change, what needs to shift. So, an example of this is, just binging in general. When, for me, for example, I was always someone who was, binging food. I was always binging alcohol. I was binging Netflix, so these details, I was also a very compulsive shopper. But until I really went deep, dark into the healing of things, I wasn't aware of the root cause of where these came from. So that took time, and it takes time naturally. But it's when I found the root, because there's always a root. We always think, oh, it's this, it's my family dynamics. That's not the root. That's, a layer of it. But we have to find like the root cause of where it came from. So me, when I would go ahead to, binge Netflix, I really uncovered the root fact that when I was triggered to binge Netflix, I was really trying to elicit a feeling of feeling loved and seen and heard in my relationships. So that really was my trigger. So when I brought that to light and I became aware of that, I had no desire to binge Netflix anymore. It truly just kind of fell away. And at any point when I was feeling that, I, wasn't being appreciated in my relationships, I was feeling, alone in them, I went ahead to take different steps, set boundaries, have hard conversations. And yes, that did bring change into my life and into my relationships. But, moving forward in regards to that, because I've become aware of the root cause of it, I feel no longer triggered into binging Netflix because I'm aware of the root, that if I'm feeling triggered into that, there's something that needs to be addressed in my relationships. So I go ahead and address the root cause. Because if we're being direct and we're directing our energy to actually, take action towards the root cause, then the other thing doesn't trigger us because we know exactly where to go. It's exactly like, if you run out of gas, with your car. If you were someone who didn't know that you had to get to a gas station, like you would just be there sitting confused on the side of the road. But, most people know. But, if you know that you need to get to a gas station, then you're looking for a gas station. You're directing your energy, your focus to get to a gas station to, fix the problem. So it's the same thing with our mind, is that we need to direct our energy to the root cause of what needs to, be directed and shifted so that we can, just bring awareness to why we're feeling triggered into binging so that we can, just stop it. And, me, when I was always feeling triggered into drinking alcohol, I know substances, they're so heavily just built in, we all want to numb out. And like I said, choosing to binge is either to elicit a feeling that you want to feel or it's to numb out. And, me with alcohol, I was always somebody who, just wanted to numb out on it. And it really came down to the fact that I recognized that I would indulge in alcohol. And there were some periods where it was a lot, it was heavy. But when it was heavy, I really had to recognize, what is the root cause of why I'm feeling triggered into this? And it was in numbing out, the fact that I didn't feel like I belonged. So it was a weird thing. So drinking alcohol typically is a social thing. So I'd be out in social groups, but, and I know this is hard to hear for anyone who, was a part of my past life and, those details, but I didn't feel like I fit in. I felt like I always was trying to be, myself, and, I was the only one ever just running around the backyard chasing fireflies while everyone else was, just sitting doing their own thing. And I would just look over and, no one's paying attention to me. I was always, in the conversations, but, the conversation topics were not things that I knew or really desired to talk about in regards to, shopping and celebrities and those details. It's just something that, didn't fill me up with joy, I didn't resonate with. And it doesn't mean I didn't love these people. It doesn't mean that, I don't care deeply for them. It's just, I just wasn't aware of who I was, and I was trying to fit in places that, just didn't feel aligned with me. So unconsciously in social gatherings and, these details, and sometimes, in my romantic relationship when I felt very unseen and unheard, and those details, when I felt like I didn't belong in the relationships, I would go ahead to drink excessively. So when I became aware of that, I discovered the root. So now, in future, typically, me just kind of leaving these circumstances, these environments, alcohol just doesn't really interest me. I'm not someone who says I'm sober, but I haven't, had a drink, I think, in like a year. But I'm not counting because I don't like to hold an identity to things. So, who knows in future, but it just doesn't interest me. It just doesn't hold value in my life, moving forward. But I think it's also because I became aware of the root cause of what was causing me to binge on alcohol. And that was the fact that I felt like I didn't belong in my relationships. So now when I'm building relationships, I very much am conscious about, connecting with people and continuing to grow relationships only if, I have that feeling that I feel seen and heard and that, we connect on that level. So I have no desire to have to numb out in my relationships for the fact that I feel like I don't fit in. I very much am growing, my own relationship with myself to know who I am. So, these details, when you've become aware of the root of why you binge, it really helps you to shift it up in your life. It really helps you to kind of let it go. And I can tell you, for someone who felt like they had no control over these things for the longest time, for decades, because I became aware of the root, they literally felt like they just felt off. Like they just kind of removed themselves, from my life. Like I no longer was triggered to the same extent. If I was a little bit, I kind of would just kind of sit with it, question it. But because I was aware of it, it just no longer triggered me in the same sense that I felt like I didn't have control over these things. So, and, with, binge eating, I became aware of the fact in reflection and in healing that when, I did know kind of where it came from, and it came from my childhood, and, being overly criticized in regards to, weight and these details and competitive sports and, being a woman and all of these different details. And, it's a hard thing. So, in binge eating, I was like kind of, looking at like the general of like where it came from. But I did, come to the awareness to uncover the deep, deep root of where binging came from. And, me binge eating really does come from me not feeling safe in my home environment. So, that's really what it's about. So, if it's, in the financial sense and I don't feel, secure in my home, if I am living with roommates and I don't feel that I can be authentically myself, if I feel that, I'm living with roommates and I can't come home and ground and, cook as, a calm self and regulate my nervous system, if I feel that, in my relationships of who I'm living with, whether that's, family or romantic, regardless, if I'm feeling unsafe, and it doesn't mean I'm in danger, but if I'm feeling unsafe because I can't be authentically me, if I feel that I cannot be in my home with a regulated nervous system because of the people who are in it, or just my home in general, because energy is everything. So sometimes we don't always know what that is, but if it's causing me to be dysregulated in my nervous system, that causes me to binge on food. So uncovering that root, it helps me. And that's, probably the biggest binge that I've always struggled with is binging on food. So when now, and like, because we eat food every day. So it's a harder one to get rid of, I feel. So if you struggle with that, I feel ya. Because we kind of need to eat. And yes, we can do fasting, but let's be real, fasting doesn't stick when we're, constantly stuck in this, fact that we feel that we can't control binge eating. So when we go ahead to, binge eat, when you can find the root cause of it, it really helps to direct you to what needs to shift that maybe sometimes you can't think of or you're not aware of. So if ever, in future, in past time, even just a week ago, I felt the need to, binge on food, I really sat with it and said, okay, well, now I know it's because I don't feel safe in my home. Okay, I need to look at my home environment. Okay, is it the people? Is it where I'm living? Is it, I'm not feeling secure in my financial sense? Why am I feeling dysregulated my nervous system in my home? And that's exactly where you draw your focus to. You kind of do a self-reflection, look at everything. You're not confused anymore of where's this binging come from? I don't know, but I can't seem to stop. Because you found the root, you know exactly where to look. You know exactly where to go. And, that will bring you to a space that you do need to make changes. But because you are aware of it, it's so much easier. And even, just, compulsively shopping. That's something that I would always binge, in the past and, those details. But, uncovering that root, kind of going through that, I recognized that I had a very unhealthy relationship with, finances that came about, through my childhood. I felt like I was paid off a lot of the time. I really, was resentful and I had a lot of anger around money because I really just, felt like I wanted, to be seen and heard and feel, loved and that sense in those details. But, it was always just kind of, we have money, but that's kind of what it was. So coming to that, I had to go deep into the root cause of why I was always compulsively shopping. And it really was because, of the fact, of those details that, while yes, we love money, I didn't really like money. I didn't want money. It really brought on an icky feeling because of, what has been brought up in my, personal experience in society, in childhood and those details. But, I had to go ahead to kind of uncover the root cause of it and, where it came from for me to, let that go, to understand that, spending all my money, it's not really for me. And I could tell you, when you find the root cause of things, like these details just really fall into place. They just kind of fall off and you don't feel like you are lacking control to change these things in your life. So, that is, step number one. And I think it is the most, impactful is to find the root. And as mentioned in step number one, find the root and live in alignment. So when we find the root, that's really coming to the space that, we're drawing awareness to where it needs to go. But when we're living in alignment, that's us living, a fulfilling life. And I'm sure you can relate to this. But when I feel like I'm aligned in life, I feel like I'm living with intention, with purpose. I have no desire to binge. I'm very much in a higher vibration in my, emotions, in my well-being, that, I'm enjoying life, I'm living life, I'm at peace with what is. I don't feel the need to binge on things. I'm going outside, I'm, going to fitness classes, I'm connecting with, friends, I'm, volunteering. I'm not choosing to binge on Netflix because it's unfulfilling and I'm living a fulfilling life. I'm living in alignment. I have no desire to binge on alcohol if I'm feeling, seen and heard in my relationships, and, I have that deep, intimate connection with them. Naturally, I have no desire to binge on alcohol because I'm not trying to fill a void. I'm not trying to elicit a feeling or to numb out. So that's, part of step one, is that we need to find the root cause, but also when we live in alignment, we feel it in our soul. We feel that we are whole. We feel like we're living with intention and purpose. Binging naturally falls away. So I say this with love, and this is something I struggled with for a very long time. So if you're struggling with binging in any area, really start questioning, how you're living life and what needs to change so that you're feeling fulfilled. Because if we're binging, it's really coming to a space of emotion. We're trying to elicit a feeling or to numb out, which means that something's missing. We're feeling that we're out of alignment in life. We're not living a life, with direct intention that's lifting up our soul, lifting up our energy, our spirit, our vibration, living the high life. That's really what it's about. So I say it with love, but you really need to question that as well. So go ahead to, for step number one, uncover the root cause, and that takes time. And then really start questioning, if you are binging, are you living in alignment? And if not, really start reflecting on where is it, that lights me up? What is it I'm meant to change and pursue in life? So that really is step number one. Step number two, to, help you through, the process of stopping to binge, is to build your self-support system. So, yay! And, this kind of goes into the aspect of saying that, as I mentioned before, we like to view, binge eating or binging in general as that, it's, a relationship with a substance, as a relationship with food. What I've learned is that it is the relationship with yourself. And like I said, this also goes with alignment. Because if you build a relationship with yourself, you're choosing every day to take action, to make changes, to do what feels right to you, regardless of what people say, regardless of what society tells you to do. You're choosing change, you're choosing to grow, you're choosing to fall into alignment that's authentic to you. And that naturally is you building a relationship with yourself. That's you choosing self-love. That's you choosing hard decisions to do what feels right to you and aligned. So when we can come to that space, and yes, this comes back to healing. We always have so much healing to do. But if we're binging, naturally, we need to be honest with ourselves. There's healing to do. So, building our, self-support system is vital. Building that support system, is going to help you. And a lot of time with binging, as I mentioned, there's a root cause. And, a lot of the time, it comes from a trauma. It comes from feeling neglected. It comes from being overly criticized. It comes from different details of exterior, circumstances and relationships that we feel, were put onto us, that we, fell into these habits of binging. So that means that we need to eliminate that. We need to eliminate that perception that an exterior circumstance controls us. We have the control over our lives and our, how we treat ourselves. And binging is a reflection of how we treat ourselves. And I know that's hard to hear. And I'm sending you love through the microphone here. But, I had to learn that the hard way, as well as that, I thought that, I liked myself. And, I had to come to the realization that I had no self-love. I did not have a strong relationship with myself. So this is the support system that you need, is the relationship with yourself. because self-love is choosing yourself, and that comes with doing hard things as well. Self-love isn't always about taking bubble baths and saying that, oh, I deserve this, that sort of thing. Yes, treat yourself, but if we're binging, we have to be honest to the fact that maybe how we view self-love is a little off. Self-love is doing hard things to treat yourself right. Self-love is you choosing to you know set boundaries with people so that it helps you get to a healthier, better space. Self love is choosing to say no to things when maybe perhaps we are someone who people pleases. Saying, that, whatever it is. Self love is really, choosing to do, yes, exciting things for yourself, to take yourself out on self dates and, embrace that fact that you deserve to treat yourself right. You deserve to have a strong, healthy, and vibrant relationship with yourself because you're your best friend. But, it is choosing hard things as well in, our lives, and also facing ourselves to choose hard things, to really, have hard conversations with ourselves, in our relationships with other people, in our environments, which goes with our careers, how we show up, and making those hard decisions and taking actions accordingly. That basically is leading us to, a good, strong support system. So this is, going to be different because, binging is, a tricky one. So if you are, triggered in your home, if you are triggered, you need to question your environment. So question as well, when you are feeling the need to binge, where are you? Who's around? What just happened? Asking these questions is going to help you to, one, uncover the root as to, where the binging is coming from and the feelings that are coming about that are causing you to, feel the need to binge. But, when we can go ahead to really look at our environments, when we can go ahead to kind of just address the present moment when we're feeling triggered into binging, this will help us in self-reflection of how we need to adjust the relationship we hold with ourselves. Because if you're feeling triggered to, let's say, binge eat and, you're home, maybe you're home alone. Okay, so I'm home alone. Nothing's really, causing my nervous system to be dysregulated. Why do I always feel the need to binge eat? Is it always when I'm home alone? Take note, make note of this. Keep a journal, keep track. And maybe there's a correlation there. Maybe it's every time that, your partner's not at home and you're home alone, you're feeling the need to binge eat. That's something to question. A lot of the time we struggle with mindfulness. We struggle to be alone with ourselves, our thoughts. So if you're someone, who struggles with this, maybe you become anxious being alone. And that was me, at a period in time. I didn't know how to practice mindfulness. I was always living in a state of fight or flight. So, in practicing that, it was very overwhelming. So naturally, it's a self-protective mechanism, binging. So perhaps, that's something that you are partaking in to not be alone, to not have to think of, the thoughts that are trying to come about. And, that's sometimes what we do naturally when we're around people. It's, a distraction to a sense. Yes, we're having, meaningful connections and conversations, but when we're forced to kind of sit alone, we're forced to kind of face things. We're forced to feel emotions that we don't want to feel. So maybe that's why you're choosing to binge, to, numb out instead of to feel what's coming up. So make note of what's going about, because that's going to help to, one, as I mentioned, help you find the root cause, but it's also going to help you in self-reflection to understand, where it is you need to adjust the relationship with yourself, to say, okay, why can't I be alone with myself? Because that's a problem. It's a problem to say that I can't build a relationship with myself if I can't be alone with myself. So that comes with the healing, that comes with these details. So, that's a great tool that you can take into, just trying to figure out the details of where this binge is coming from, why you're always triggered into binging, is to just kind of relate, sit in it when the trigger comes about, and really just make note of what's going on. Who's there? Did you just have a difficult conversation on the phone? What was it about? Was it about money? Are you triggered, having to go out to, a party you don't want to go to? Is it because you're home alone? Is it because that you're, overworking yourself? You haven't been eating properly. You are feeling that, you're on a diet and you're restricting yourself too much. that leads you into, feeling that, you're feeling a low vibrational emotion, right? When we're restricted with food, that we say, oh, I'm not going to eat all this stuff. And then we fall back into a cycle again. And then we binge, and then we fall back into the guilt and the shame of things. So it's a hard pattern. It's a hard cycle. So just make note, see what's coming about. And there will be correlation there. There will be kind of, different aspects. So connect the dots, become the detective of your life. And that will, help to bring awareness to what needs to change, and also will just help you to understand yourself better. And that's, building the support system you need. That's really building the relationship with yourself, is that you need to know yourself. You need to understand your triggers, but you also need to understand, how you're showing up in life and how you perceive it. Because how you perceive life is, what's manifesting. How you perceive life is, how you're approaching life. And, a lot of it is unconscious when it comes to, binging. When we feel that we're stuck in the mind, we don't have control over these things. It's just a natural process that, we're struggling. We don't feel like we have a strong support system with ourselves. And that's something we need to build. So go ahead in self-reflection and do these things. And that will help to, bring you to an elevated space. And, with this as well, when you're going through the healing and building that strong relationship with yourself, that self-love that you deserve, we need to also, in time, allow ourselves forgiveness. So this will come with us forgiving ourselves. And yes, we always talk about in healing that, you need to forgive the other person, because forgiving other people is, not about them. It is about you letting go of those energetic ties. It's about you letting go of that from your mind, so that you can truly let it go, set it free, so it doesn't affect you. And that's really what it's about. But we don't talk enough about the fact that we need to forgive ourselves, because we're so hard on ourselves. And, to build a strong support system and relationship with yourself, you're going to have to give yourself permission to forgive yourself. Because in time, when it feels right, when you finally forgive yourself for, partaking in binging over time, whatever it is that, kind of comes about in life in your healing journey, forgiveness for yourself is very important. And, yes, when we become aware and we feel shame that, we don't want to be partaking in things, we don't like how we showed up in life, that's okay. We are all, going through struggle. We are all trying, different things. And a lot of the time it is, self-protective patterns. A lot of the time it is things that we feel like we don't have control over. And, it's just becoming aware of it, recognizing it, and saying, hey, I don't like how I'm showing up. I'm going to take responsibility for it. And moving forward, I'm not going to, partake in this, aspect. But we need to forgive ourselves so we can let that go, so we don't stay stuck in the embodiment of low vibrational emotions. We don't stay stuck in the shame, the guilt, the fear that, I can't eat these things, or I can't binge, because naturally we're triggered into a lot of the same if we're really holding on to these, emotions that are triggering us. If we feel fear to, eat, something, that we want to be eating, because we feel the fear that we're going to binge naturally, because it's a low vibration, and that's just, part of what's been, conditioned in our subconscious mind. When we are feeling, the shame, when we do binge and we don't allow ourselves to forgive ourselves for that binge, then we're going to fall back into a cycle, because we're not forgiving, the fact that we binged and we felt like we didn't have control over it at that point in time. So forgiveness for yourself is really important on this journey. Now, step number 3 to help you in overcoming binging is, this one is more focused on, eating, but, it's choosing, having conscious choices, but, intuitive eating. So when it comes to, binge eating, specifically, what I have learned is that me personally, when I felt, the need, or when I do feel, because I still kind of struggle with it sometimes, to, binge eat, it really does come down to a lot of the time, part of the systems of my childhood, that I felt that I didn't have, specific availability to food, because not that we didn't have it, but that it was kind of not allowed. I was always kind of, in this space that I was overly criticized in what I could eat. So I felt restricted. So that leads us into those low vibrational emotions, and that leads us into a dysregulated nervous system. So that's what it's about, is that when you can get to a space that you're intuitively eating and, making conscious choices with your binging, then you can really get to a better space. So this is also coming to, a space in my mindset as well, as that, when I actually, didn't have money for food, I would go ahead to binge food when I had access to the money to do that. And naturally, you're going to say that if you were starving, yes, fasting, I like to partake in fasting. But if you're being forced to fast because you don't have access to food, this is the problem, is that we will often be triggered into, binges to numb out, to make us feel safe, in the fact that you didn't have food. So it's just a bunch of dysregulation in our nervous systems. So when we can get to a space that we are, intuitively eating, we need to make sure that, we are consciously making those choices to, have, some treats that, we feel we need to. We're allowing ourselves, portions, that are healthy of what it is we're actually craving so that we don't binge. But also, we need to be able to feel regulated in our nervous system so that we have the funds, that we're not, restricted. Because binging, a lot of the time, it comes down to, what you're feeling triggered to binge. And that can be, sugar, that can be, ice cream, that can be something very specific. And let's be real, we binge if we don't actually, allow ourselves to be present, to be calm in our nervous system, and enjoy what it is we're actually craving. So when, let's say, you are, out and about, you're craving ice cream from your favorite, ice cream shop, but, you're being hard on yourself. And yes, we need to be disciplined. We need to, stay healthy sometimes. We can't be, enjoying treats all the time. And I get that. But if you're trying to overcome, binging or binge eating, this is part of the process, is that, you can't fall into the shame of things. You can't fall into the restriction. You can't fall into the guilt. It's a slow progression. So this is really, for you to understand where you are. And sometimes that's not going to look maybe the healthiest, but if it's working for you, you can slowly cut back. And that's just, because you're feeling triggered in these things. Because if we want that ice cream and we're out and about and we tell ourselves no, let's be real. We're going to go home. We're going to say, I'm just going to have a smoothie. And then we're going to have a smoothie. It's not going to satisfy us. We're still going to be thinking about that ice cream. And then you're going to have, a handful of granola. And, that didn't really work. So then maybe you're like, maybe I could just have some chocolate. And, you have the chocolate and, it's not the same thing. And then you just say, fuck it. Then you go to the grocery store and you buy a tub of ice cream and you eat the whole tub. And, the whole time, you consumed more calories. You went through a binge of different things, which wastes a lot of time, waste your money. And it's leading us into the emotion that we don't want to be feeling. We feel a lot of shame. We're questioning, why the hell did I do this again? And that's what it's about, instead of just giving ourselves the self-love and permission to say, hey, you know what? I've been really good this week. And it's not like, I deserve this thing. But when we're trying to get to a space of binge eating intuitively is good. When you're craving something really, really bad, allow yourself to have it. We can't always be so hard on ourselves all the time. And I think that's, a big part of overcoming binging. So, yeah, that's really, my recommendation with that. A lot of the time we just feel so restricted to say, I deserve this. I did my workout. I was so good this week. And, yes, we need to be disciplined to a certain extent, to choose healthy, eating clean foods, an 80-20 kind of thing. But, it's also coming to the fact that, we can't view things as a diet. We can't view things as good or bad. We just need to, take little steps day by day to shift and change to get us to the way of eating that we want to get us to a space that we feel that we have a healthy relationship with food, that we have a healthy relationship with alcohol, that we have a healthy relationship with, our finances, how we spend them, that, we have a healthy relationship in the media we consume. We're not, doom scrolling for hours on end. We're not watching Netflix for 4 hours till 3 o'clock in the morning when we work the next day. It's making conscious choices that is really going to help you, in this process. But, it doesn't have to be full swoop. I know we love to do these challenges to say, just cut it out, just do this. what people are sharing with you is what is working uniquely for them, and that's great. I do the same, but you need to do trial and error, and you need to take little baby steps if you feel it's working for you. If you feel that, going big and just really shifting things up is not helping you in any regard, then you need to understand that that's okay. That doesn't work for you. Take baby steps. Do what is working. Try a little bit, a little more, do a little change, try something new, see if it works. That's really what life is about. Life is about trial and error. So getting to that space, that's going to be a unique journey to you, but intuitive eating and making conscious choices, I think, are really, important to help you get to a better space in the binging of things. And lastly, number 4, for, helping you through this process. And, I think it's really good. And yeah, so the last one could not be ideal, depending, where you are in your healing journey with binging. But this is more specific to food. But I do recommend this, but take it with caution, take it in ways that work for you, take it in a safe sense. But I find that fasting is, truly helped me in the binging process of overcoming it. Now, fasting, I chose to partake in this, as I healed a lot. I chose to partake in this as I was kind of near the end of addressing a lot of my binging habits. And this is what it's about. And as I was mentioning, yes, allow yourself the self-love to treat yourself. But as I mentioned too, we also need to be disciplined in a sense. So what I found to be really helpful in regards to fasting, what worked for me a little bit at a time, trying different things, not trying to be restrictive with it, not trying to say that I can't have food, this is good or bad. Sometimes in the start of things, I would fall off of the fast. That's fine. Forgive yourself. Understand that's part of the process. And you could say, hey, great. Okay, I didn't eat food for 6 hours. Maybe that's something, I typically don't do. Cool. That's progress. That's something to look forward to. We get so stuck on, I want to do this, 8-hour whatever, but maybe you only made it to 6. That's okay. It's progress. It's different. Just take it one day at a time. But what I found with fasting is that, it helped me uniquely to kind of break free of the ego of binging. When I chose to fast, with binging, it really is about gluttony. So binging, whether it's, Netflix, overconsumption of that, whether it's, binging on alcohol, binging, in substances in general, or on, food, it comes with gluttony. So fasting helped me later in my journey of overcoming binging because I was allowing myself to restrict that, and it forced me to basically face my ego and face that gluttony that sometimes unconsciously is there that we don't always like to think about, because our ego doesn't want us to face that fact. Our ego doesn't want us to face the fact that, hey, you know what? I don't need to be consuming all this stuff. We don't need to be buying all of this clothes. We don't need to be, consuming in large portions. Binging, yes, it's a protective mechanism, but if we want to break free of it too, as you're healing and you feel that it's right for you in the right moment, and you feel like you're in a safe environment and you're safe and feel calm in your nervous system on this journey, and you're feeling the call to try to dip your toe into fasting, I really recommend it, because it really just helped me uniquely to bring awareness to the gluttony that's really heavily built into our society, but that I was, unconsciously taking into my life all the time. It really forced me to face fact of those things, because when you're choosing to fast, you are really getting to a space of gratitude. You're really coming to a space that, you are not binging on food. You understand how it feels in your body. Let's say that if you didn't have access to food, if you didn't have access to binging these things, it's not available to you. And, as I mentioned before, like there was a phase where, I was basically being forced to fast. But in choosing to fast, it's the same concept, is that you're choosing to restrict things. You're choosing to partake in that. And it brings you to face your ego. It brings you to face the gluttony of things. And gluttony is, heavily built with binging because it's overconsumption. So, this is something I really recommend, but as I mentioned, don't be overly restrictive with it. Do it from a safe space. It's, kind of counterintuitive. And as I mentioned, some people might disagree, and that's fine. Like I mentioned, do what works for you. If it's not working for you, like that's fine. And as I said, like do it from a safe space, like seek support if you need to. But if you're feeling that, you've done all the other stuff, you're feeling that, yes, you've overcome a lot of the binging habits, but you're still feeling like it's kind of, still triggering you a bit, and you're feeling called, you're feeling safe, you're feeling that, what, maybe I will try fasting. Just start small. You can do something as simple as, just as I mentioned, just try a 6-hour thing, seeing if you feel triggered into it. And you will kind of recognize, and what I recognize as well, is that when I was doing this, I was forced to face different healing, right? So it forces you to face things you have to heal anyway. But when you go ahead to heal those, you will recognize that you're healing things that sometimes you're unconscious of. You're healing the gluttony, you're healing, the shadow self that often leads us into this gluttony state that we're choosing to binge on something. And naturally, the binging just kind of falls away. Naturally, in time, you will just kind of recognize that it's working. It's, helping you to get out of whatever else is like holding on in regards to feeling triggered into binging on things. And I found that really helpful on my journey. So, perhaps it helps you. And I think it is a wonderful tool for you to bring into, your life and to get to a better space. So these are the 4 tools that I've used and I recommend to help you uniquely in your unique way to, come out of the binging, to get to a better space in your mental sense, and to feel that you have control over the binging. Because I feel like that is the hardest thing to, get to, is that when it comes to binging, we feel that we don't have control over it. So this is, a part of it. Yes, we need to choose to grow. Yes, we need to heal. And that is a big part of it. But these 4 steps truly will help to bring awareness to what needs to shift, what needs to change, what needs to be addressed in your life. That's going to help you in self-reflection to understand, yourself and why you're feeling triggered into binging and where it comes from, so that you can bring awareness to it and then let it go, set it free, say goodbye, see you later. Please don't come back. We're done with you. But once you honestly, bring awareness to these things, once you become aware of these details, you're aware of it. You know where it comes from. It's so much easier to let it go. You don't feel, that it has control over you. You have control over it. And yes, naturally, sometimes you might fall into a binge. You might be going through a hard time. It's okay. We need to forgive ourselves, build that self-love, the relationship with ourselves, and, just start the process, here and there as, time goes on, overcoming these things. Sometimes we're going to fall off the wagon, and that's okay. It's a part of life. It's a part of the process. Life is about trial and error, and sometimes naturally, we don't always know what's going to trigger us. So give yourself some love, forgive yourself, and know that, this is just, something that a lot of us struggle with. But I can tell you, you can get to a better space and overcome these binging habits. And truly, that's my wish for you. So I hope that this episode helps you on your unique journey of overcoming the binging to, take back your power and, take control of your life in that sense. And it's a beautiful thing. It, takes up, less of your time, less of your money, less of the mental struggle and, intense anxiety that comes about when we are stuck in this cycle of binging. And that's really what I want for you, is to get to a better, enlightened space in your life. So I hope that this episode helps you. And, I just wish that, you choose yourself, choose self-love, choose yourself. And when you choose yourself, every time you will choose growth. Every time you choose yourself, you also choose love for other people. So you choosing to make change in your life, with the binging, with any area of your life, you're inspiring other people to do the same. You're inspiring other people to grow. You're inspiring other people to face, the hard things, to overcome these challenges like binging or whatever it may be. You choosing yourself is giving other people, the light that they need to understand, maybe how they show up in their lives, maybe how they show up in your lives, do the hard things, choose yourself, and have those hard conversations with yourself, in your career, in, your relationships. If you're kind of coming to, the healing process of things, to recognize that maybe there's different details you need to shift and change to overcome binging, but choose yourself. I say this all the time, but choosing yourself is self love, and self love is really choosing to love other people. Because when you are, choosing yourself, even if it comes with you having to leave an environment, when it comes to you having a difficult conversation with someone, removing your light sometimes, it's basically giving the opportunity to the other person to grow and change as well. You choosing yourself and choosing self love is giving the other people, in your life the opportunity to choose self love, to change. Because that's what it's about, is that, let's face it, we don't want to be people, who are binging all the time. It's something we feel a lot of shame with. It's something we don't want to be partaking. But, you choosing to make changes in any, aspect of what you feel you need to in life, whether that's, in relation to binging, whether that's, overcoming different details in your healing process, and you've come to the awareness of things and you're like, this needs to change because I'm choosing myself, I'm choosing self-love. You're just presenting that opportunity to other people to say, hey, you know what, this person, is having a hard conversation with me. They're saying that, I'm kind of triggering them into, this aspect that's leading them into a dark place, which causes them to binge. This is my opportunity to reflect on things. This is my opportunity to, gain awareness to, how I show up in their life. Am I going to change? You're providing that opportunity for people to change and grow, and, show them that, okay, you hold an effect on me, which means you likely hold an effect on other people, and that's something that they need to heal with themselves, and give themselves that self-love to grow and change, and we can all elevate and, embark on a journey of self-love together. That's what it's about. So, that's a unique end to, this episode, but choose yourself, choose self-love, because choosing self-love is really, choosing to love everyone else. Keep shining, lovely beings, and know that I believe in you in your unique way.